Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring some excerpts from this really intriguing text called Bringing the Divine Down into Man. Just the title alone, wow, right. We'll be unpacking its core idea, which is, you guessed it, bringing the divine down into man.
Yeah, and what makes this depth dive even more intriguing is that the text is just packed with numerological references and these really unusual symbols. It definitely feels like we're about to decode something pretty special.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this concept of bringing the divine down into man. What does the text actually say about this?
Well, the text uses really vivid, almost poetic language to describe a process of profound inner transformation. It suggests that through this process, man can become like a vessel, a conduit for divine energy.
When I first read that, I immediately thought, what does being a vessel actually look like? Does the text give us any concrete details about that?
It does get into some specifics, like, for example, there's this one passage that talks about the descent of the celestial fire into the earthly vessel. It uses this powerful imagery of fire representing divine energy, and the vessel is a Welles. It really emphasizes this idea of the human being as a receptacle for something much greater than ourselves.
Okay, that definitely paints a more vivid picture. So we've got this idea of a transformative process where we become vessels for divine energy. But I'm noticing the text also uses a lot of numbers, 2, 8, and 9 specifically. Are those just random, or is there something more to them?
That's one of the most fascinating aspects of this text. These numbers seem to be really carefully placed, suggesting a deeper symbolic meaning. Take the number 2, for instance. It appears quite frequently, particularly in sections that discuss the separation between the human and the divine.
So the number 2, symbolizing that duality, that's a pretty common interpretation of that number in a lot of mystical traditions. What about the other numbers?
Exactly. It's like a familiar thread that's woven into this text. Now, when it comes to 8, it mostly shows up when the text describes the stages of transformation. There's one section that specifically mentions an 8-fold path of ascent, which might imply a step-by-step process.
Ooh, I'm always intrigued by the idea of a step-by-step process for something as complex as inner transformation. It makes it feel a little less daunting, Like, okay, maybe I can actually grasp this.
Absolutely. And then we have the number 9, which seems to be associated with the ultimate goal of this whole process. It's often mentioned in sections that describe the merging of the human and the divine, like a state of complete unity or wholeness.
So it's like these numbers provide a kind of framework for understanding this transformation. The 2 representing the initial separation, the 8 showing the path, and the 9 symbolizing the final union.
That's a really insightful way to put it. It's almost like we're piecing together a puzzle, and each number gives us another clue to the bigger picture.
Speaking of the bigger picture, how does the text connect this idea of individual transformation to humanity as a whole? Does it hint at any larger implications?
It does touch upon that. There's a passage that describes this process of bringing the divine down as something that can ripple outwards, influencing not just the individual, but their community and the world around them.
That's interesting. So it's not just about personal enlightenment, but about creating a positive change that extends beyond ourselves. It almost sounds like a chain reaction of sorts.
That's a great way to think about it. The text uses this beautiful metaphor of a single lamp lighting countless others. It suggests that as individuals connect with this divine energy, they become like beacons, illuminating the path for others to follow.
Okay, I'm really starting to grasp the potential impact here. It's like each person who undergoes this transformation becomes a catalyst for positive change in the world.
Yeah.
Pretty powerful concept.
It is, and it invites us to consider the responsibility that comes with such potential. The text emphasizes that bringing the divine down is not something that just happens passively. It requires effort, intention, and a willingness to actively engage in this process of transformation.
So there's work involved. It's not just about reading a text or having a mystical experience. It's about actively integrating these concepts into our lives and putting in the effort to embody this change.
Precisely. It's an ongoing journey, not a one-time event. And the text does hint at some of the challenges one might encounter along the way. For example, there's a passage that talks about the resistance of the ego, the part of us that clings to its limited sense of self.
That makes sense. If we're trying to merge with something greater than ourselves, our ego might feel threatened, right? It's like it's losing control.
Yeah.
Does the text offer any guidance on how to overcome that resistance?
It does. It talks about the importance of cultivating qualities like humility, compassion, and surrender. It suggests that by softening the ego's grip, we create space for the divine to flow through us more freely.
That's a really interesting point. It's not about eliminating the ego entirely, but about transforming it, refining it so that it can become an instrument for this higher purpose.
Exactly. It's about aligning our individual will with the divine will, allowing ourselves to become instruments of something greater than ourselves.
You know, as we're talking about this, I keep thinking back to those numerological references. Is there anything in the text that connects those numbers to this idea of overcoming the ego's resistance?
There is. Remember the Eightfold Path we mentioned earlier? Well, there's a section that breaks down those 8 stages, and each stage is associated with specific challenges and virtues to cultivate.
Oh, wow. So it actually outlines those 8 steps. What kind of virtues does it mention?
It lists qualities like mindfulness, self-discipline, right speech, and right action. It seems to be emphasizing the importance of aligning our thoughts, words, and actions with this higher purpose.
So it's a holistic approach. It's not just about internal transformation, but about how we interact with the world around us.
Exactly. The text suggests that true transformation happens when we integrate these principles into every aspect of our lives.
That's a pretty powerful message. It's like it's saying that bringing the divine down isn't just a mystical concept, but a way of life, a way of being in the world.
Yes, and it invites us to consider how we can embody these principles in our own lives. How can we cultivate humility, compassion, and surrender in our daily interactions? How can we become those beacons of light that the text describes?
Those are great questions, and I think those are the kinds of questions our listeners might be asking themselves right now. As we're exploring these concepts, I'm wondering, what's resonating with you the most? Is there anything that's particularly striking a chord?
What's really resonating with me is this idea that bringing the divine down is not a solitary pursuit. It's something we do together collectively. It's about creating a world where these qualities of compassion, understanding, and interconnectedness are woven into the very fabric of our society.
I love that. It's not just about individual enlightenment. It's about creating a better world for everyone.
Right. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected, part of a larger whole, and that as we transform ourselves, we contribute to the transformation of the whole.
Okay, that brings me back to something we touched on earlier, that passage about the single lamp lighting countless others. Do you think the text is suggesting that this transformation has a ripple effect? Like, as more people embody these principles, does it create a kind of momentum that makes it easier for others to follow?
That's a really insightful question. And honestly, it's something that I've pondered myself. The text doesn't explicitly state that, but it does imply that there's a collective aspect to this transformation. It talks about the creation of a spiritual community where individuals support and uplift each other on their journeys.
That's a beautiful image. It's like we're all in this together, helping each other to bring the divine down into this world.
Exactly. It's a collective effort, a shared aspiration to create a world that reflects the highest ideals of compassion, wisdom, and love.
So it's not just about transforming ourselves, but about transforming the world around us. That's a pretty huge responsibility, but also an incredibly inspiring one.
It is. And it brings us back to that core concept, bringing the divine down into man. It's not just a mystical idea, it's a call to action, an invitation to become agents of positive change in the world.
Okay, I'm feeling really inspired right now. But before we get too carried away, I want to circle back to those strange symbols we mentioned at the beginning. We talked about the numbers, but what about those other symbols? Do they hold any significance?
You know, that's one of the biggest mysteries of this text. Those symbols are scattered throughout, almost like a secret code waiting to be deciphered. Some scholars believe they might be a form of ancient shorthand or a symbolic language that holds even deeper meaning.
That's intriguing.
Yeah.
So it's like there's another layer to this whole thing, something beyond the numbers and the words themselves.
Exactly, and that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. It's not just about understanding the literal meaning of the text, but about exploring those hidden layers, those deeper
like we've been given a treasure map, but we need to learn the language of the map to find the treasure.
That's a perfect analogy, and that's where our own intuition and inner wisdom come into play. The text encourages us not just to analyze it intellectually, but to feel into it, to meditate on its meaning, and to allow those deeper insights to emerge organically.
I love that. It's about engaging with the text on multiple levels, not just the intellectual, but also the intuitive, the experiential. It's about allowing ourselves to be transformed by the process of exploring it. It really feels like this text is inviting us on this journey of discovery, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
It is, and like any worthwhile journey, it's bound to have its challenges. The text even hints at some of the obstacles that we might face. There's one passage that talks about the shadow self and the need to confront our own inner darkness as part of this process.
That's a fascinating point. So it's not just about embracing the light, but also about acknowledging and integrating those darker aspects of ourselves. That must be where a lot of the real work lies, wouldn't you say?
I think you're right. The text seems to suggest that true transformation involves embracing all of who we are, both the light and the shadow. It's about bringing those hidden parts into the light of awareness and integrating them into a whole balanced self.
Okay, so it's not about denying or suppressing those parts of ourselves, but about facing them head on and finding a way to harmonize them with the rest of who we are. That's a powerful concept, but it also sounds like it could be really difficult work.
It can be, but the text assures us that we're not alone in this process. Remember that idea of a spiritual community we talked about? It suggests that we can find support and guidance from others who are on this same path.
That's reassuring to hear. It's like we're all in this together, helping each other to navigate the challenges and celebrate the victories along the way.
Exactly. And the text hints at the rewards that await those who undertake this journey. It talks about experiencing a profound sense of peace, joy, and connection, not just with the divine, but with all of creation.
Wow, so it's not just about becoming a better person, but about tapping into a deeper level of fulfillment and experiencing a sense of oneness with everything around us. That sounds pretty amazing.
It does, and it reminds us that this process of bringing the divine down is not just about striving for something in the future. It's about recognizing the divine spark that already exists within each of us and allowing that to shine through.
You know, as we're talking about this, I'm realizing that this concept has implications that extend far beyond just personal growth. It has the potential to impact how we interact with each other, how we approach challenges, and even how we view the world as a whole.
I agree completely. Imagine a world where everyone is actively striving to bring the divine down into their lives. A world where compassion, understanding, and interconnectedness are not just ideals, but lived realities.
That's a beautiful vision. And while it might seem like a lofty goal, I think this text offers us a roadmap for getting there. It provides practical steps, insights, and encouragement for anyone who's willing to embark on this journey of transformation.
And perhaps that's the most important takeaway from this deep dive. It's not just about understanding the concepts intellectually, but about allowing them to inspire us to take action to become the change we want to see in the world.
So it's a call to action, an invitation to step into our full potential as human beings and to contribute to the creation of a more beautiful and harmonious world.
Precisely. It's a reminder that we're not just passive observers in this grand cosmic dance. We're active participants, co-creators of our reality. And through our choices, our actions, and our intentions, we can bring the divine down into this world, one heart, one mind, one soul at a time.
That's a powerful thought to leave our listeners with. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious to know what's the one thing you hope our listeners will take away from this conversation?
I hope they'll walk away feeling empowered, inspired, and maybe even a little bit challenged to explore these concepts further and to discover how they can bring the divine down into their own lives.
Beautifully said. And I think that's the perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a truly enriching experience.
The pleasure was all mine. Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep bringing the divine down into this world.